So, Arthur mentioned PR and media. And this is not an actual story that happened to me, but this is a story that has been in the news, and it does involve journalism. What I would like to do first is to present you with the beginnings of the news story, and then I'd like to share what the actual journalist said. And now this is a very famous journalist, so I'm not going to give you his name, but once I share it at the end, you'll say, oh yeah, I remember that. All right, so this was in the news a few years back, and it was a journalistic integrity issue versus medical duty. So the news story went, CNN physician journalist, so this is a journalist who's also a doctor. He poses ethical dilemma after treating Nepal victims. Ethical questions have been raised after a CNN crew covering the Nepalese earthquake filmed its chief medical correspondent actually performing brain surgery. Whoa, what am I going through here? He also ended up helping somebody who was having a cardiac arrest. So this famous journalist slash neurosurgeon was there initially to report on a devastating earthquake that was 7.8 in magnitude. And on a regular basis, this journalist, whenever he was covering a piece, if there was a medical emergency, he would jump in. Well, journalists around the world said, you know, what kind of stuff is this? You know, is he a journalist? Is he doing this medical stuff to get coverage for the actual CNN, or does he really care? And people were wondering what's going on. So this is what the journalist had to say. As a physician, an on-air journalist for CNN, I was sent to cover a devastating natural disaster. The scene was chaotic. Hospitals were overwhelmed, medical supplies were running low, and people were just dying in the streets. Then I was faced with a life or death situation. A severely injured victim was brought to this makeshift station, and there were no doctors available. With my medical training, I had the ability to save them, but as a journalist, I was just supposed to be there as an observer. So here's the question that I pose to you. This is the question that the journalist has. Should I put down my camera and act as a doctor, even if it means becoming part of the story and potentially violating journalistic ethics, or would it be irresponsible of me to actually help? And I see somebody may remember this story by smiling in the audience here. So guys, I pose this. I'm gonna throw this out to you and let me know what should the journalists do? What should CNN do? So, do we have anyone? Our visitor. I love it.
We have the portable mic. So.
And we have a portable mic.
And it gives me extra steps.
Yes, yes, yes. So what would you do?
Well, this story also reminds me of my multiple hats wearing as a real estate agent, you know, where I'm often faced decisions that's ethical to real estate, but at the same time, ethical to the other hats I have been wearing in the past. So if I'm presented in a situation like this, I think I would rather put each ethics from each discipline aside and just be human. Right? Because someone needs help right now, you know. So you know, I would definitely
put it to the side.
Put off my camera, I would jump in and save human life.
Do what you have to do.
Yes.
All right. We have another comment. Yes, give the name. Right, give your name.
He's Peter.
Peter from Westbury.
He's Peter.
Peter from Westbury, our guest for today.
And I'm Helene from Hicksville. First, do no harm. I'll say, that's all I'm going to say. First, do no harm.
Okay. Any other comments? Anyone online? Oh, we have Pat, and then we'll go online if there's someone.
I agree with Peter. I mean, first, you're a human being, so you put both hats down and you become a human being. And if you have the expertise, then that's what you do.
Okay, all right. We have Arthur.
I'm not taking a position. Oh, this is Arthur, for those of you who don't know. So I'm not taking a position, but I will say this. When Martin Luther King was asked that question around photographers who were taking pictures of people being brutalized and didn't intervene, but took pictures instead, said, I'm sure glad that they took the pictures because the world otherwise wouldn't have known.
Ooh, wow, wow, wow. Yes.
I was just wondering if CNN was worried about being sued.
I think from what I hear, the position of CNN is that the conversation, well, not necessarily CNN, the conversation with journalists is it ethical? Are you there to cover the news or do you want the story on yourself? That's what journalists around the world were saying. I'll tell you what CNN said later on. Was there anyone online? Can you tell me? What? There is someone. Oh, I'm sorry, Evan. I have to look behind the screen.
Since I don't have a microphone, do you mind if I come to the podium?
Yes, please come up. State your name.
Your name. I'm Evan. I run all the tech for those who never see my face. So I've heard there are three different arguments. One is he's there as a journalist. He should not be performing surgery, period. The other argument that most of us agree with, or most people seem to agree with, is regardless of if you're there as a doctor or a journalist, you're a human being. How can you help most? You have someone's hurt. You have this training of a doctor. How can you help the most? And then the third one, which Arthur brought up, is regardless of whether you're there as a doctor or a journalist, in which capacity could you do the most good? Which isn't always easy to figure out. So that's something I noticed, and unfortunately I have to agree with Arthur rather than just automatically performing surgery. Again, situational, performing surgery in this case was the right call, but that just wanted to put in my 2 cents. Or I guess in my case, 1.5 cents.
All right. We have two more, please. Remember to state your name, and we'd love to hear your opinion.
Hi, I'm Ezra. And it seems like they kind of managed to do all of it. I mean, they have all this publicity already around the fact that this person was in, I forgot where, Nepal. Nepal. So obviously this had a lot of coverage. He was able to do the surgery. So it kind of seems like while there is the ethical dilemma of, should I step away from the journalism, it seems like the journalism was still there.
Right.
And even though he became part of the story, it's,
Right.
If anything, a story of humanity and helping others.
Okay.
So I think it's okay.
It's okay. What the situation we have here, this journalist had been doing this many, many times. Because this earthquake was so huge and made international news, journalists around the world were yelling and screaming. So folks were wondering, is it ethical? Are you doing this for the coverage? So that's where we had the issue. Yes, so this was countless times. It's the icing on the cake.
Hi, this is Gary Shaw, now from Port Washington officially, and but it still takes a while to get here, so my apologies for being late. So I think that most so-called ethical rules have escape hatches for extreme circumstances. So suppose you're following ethics that you're not supposed to engage in war, or maybe not supposed to take up arms during the Sabbath, or you're a conscientious objector. But then if you or your compatriots and colleagues are attacked, you may have the need to help them fight back, despite your so-called ethics. That's the escape hatch. And I think there is, for most ethical things, that kind of escape hatch that is appropriate, as a number of people have said, because you're basically human.
Right. Yes. We have two more. Okay.
Hi, it's Margaret Emirati. It was Sanjay Gupta. I remember it. I'm a big journalism fan.
You
And-
gave away we're at the movies and you gave the ending away.
Yes, excuse me? I'm sorry? No, but I thought you asked for the doctor. My apologies.
It's okay. It's all
I
right.
thought you asked for who the I just assumed.
Oh, okay. So if you're gonna tell
Bob-
us the ending?
No, but I was not telling you the
okay. All right.
ending. The bottom line was, I think he's a physician first, quite honestly.
Yes.
And in a circumstances like that, hell, if I were on the street and Sanjay Gupta was walking across in the city and somebody hit me, I would really hope he'd take care of me. I'm sorry.
It's all right. It's okay.
Hi, my name's Stuart Ronk. I find this an interesting conversation because I was never aware, or I haven't been aware, that journalists really had anything like an ethical code. I mean, I don't think they do, as a matter of fact, but apart from trying to be honest and trying to, as much as possible, filter out their biases from their observations and reporting. But if you're in a situation like that and your job that they're paying you for is to report on what you're seeing as well as take photographs, as Arthur's example, I don't see why you can't take photographs and at the same time intervene or maybe subsequently intervene. That's what I just don't think that there's really it makes any sense to talk about journalistic ethics, quite frankly.
We have one more.
One
I'm
more
sorry, we
comment.
have Zoom too. Okay.
Well, as someone who taught journalism ethics for about 10 years, I am sorry they paid me for wasting my time.
Okay. The last one will be someone. There's someone on Zoom. Okay, Elaine, can you let's turn your mic on?
This time is Mika Petrovich. I happen to be.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mika.
Yes, it happens that I'm the doctor myself, and the question for me is the answer is very simple. Doctor is doctor first. His work is really as good as anything else, and he doesn't have to have another job as a journalist to inform everybody else. There are a number of journalists around to do his part. That's simple as day and night. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Wow, this was a number of comments, and primarily, yes, we would help. But let me tell you what Sanjay Gupta, thank you very much, famous journalist from CNN, journalist and neurosurgeon. This is what he said. I chose to act as a doctor first and journalist second. I performed emergency surgery in the field, stabilizing the victim until proper medical care could arrive. Later, my actions sparked ethical debate. Some praised me for prioritizing human life, as we did here, over journalistic neutrality. Others questioned whether I blurred the lines too much, potentially setting a precedent where reporters couldn't intervene when they were reporting. Now, as for CNN, he says, CNN stood by me, acknowledging the difficult position that I was in. All right, everybody. Woo! Now, somebody in their conversation here mentioned war. And speaking of war, and we're taking it from, I guess, a relatively not very fighting position here, but this is Nestle had to make a decision when it came to the Ukrainian war. And if you know the story, keep your mouth shut. But I doubt it. I mean, I hadn't even seen this story. So we know Nestle. Nestle makes 2,000 brands of milkshake and hot chocolate and Kit Kat. Did you realize it was Nestle that does Kit Kat? Yeah, and Nestle does Kit Kat and a whole bunch of other candies. Well, anyway, here's the news story, and then I will give you the personal commentary from the president. The war in Ukraine and Nestle's moral dilemma. Should they stay or leave Russia? So Nestle, the world's largest food and beverage company, faced a difficult choice about 2 Februaries ago as Russian tanks rolled across the Ukraine. And we saw that this was 24/7 news. It somewhat still is news. It's all over social media. Meanwhile, in Russia, there were a number of international companies that said, we're out. You know, Russia, we can't stay here anymore. This is what you're doing. We had Volvo leaving, Boeing left, ExxonMobil left, and even Microsoft left. They said they're going to pull out of Russia because they couldn't support the war. It's the president of Nestle, CEO Mark Schneider. He said, oh my goodness, this is a heavy weight on him. He said that Nestle does good by providing some essential food items that's just not carried there, and they have employees. In particular, he was concerned about the baby formula and nutrition for children. And he says, if we leave, many people lose jobs. And he says, we also have other stuff there. We do have the Kit Kats and we have the hot chocolate and all that good kind of stuff. So this is the personal account from the CEO. And he says, as senior executive at Nestle, I had always taken pride in our company's mission to provide essential nutrition to people from around the world. But in early 2023, everything changed when Russia launched a full-scale invasion into the Ukraine. Overnight, the landscape shifted. Nestle had a long presence in Russia, employing thousands of people and supplying essential goods like baby formula, medical nutrition, and staple food products. So our business was not just about profit, it was about providing food security to millions of people. However, as the war escalated and images of destruction in the Ukraine filled the global headlines, international pressure mounted on Western companies to get out of Russia. Government, human rights organizations, and even consumers around the world were saying that we, Nestle, should take a stand and to leave. And this president goes on to saying, inside our executive meetings, the debates were intense. Some argued that continuing to operate in Russia was morally indefensible, that by staying, we were indirectly supporting the war. He says, I just didn't know what to do. So here's what I position to you. How should a company like Nestle, how should this CEO work around this? Should they leave? Should they stay? I'd like to hear your opinion. Yes, Alice, and do we have the mic?
I am Alice, as she has already stated. I just wanted to say I have to thank Nestle's because they are the reason that we are here for our, 40-something years? Way back when, David was on a protest against Nestle's because Nestle's was giving formula to very poor people and getting them for free and getting them dependent, thank you, on the formula. And then, you know, these people, their breast milk dried up and was horrible. Also, just this week, I got a message from a friend to boycott Nestle's. I forget the reasons, but I don't trust Nestle's. They're a bad company.
Okay. Peter.
Again, Peter from Westbury, and I'm very opinionated. Without getting deep in any of this, I feel on one hand, Nestle does provide baby formulas and a lot of essentials to the people. Within Russia, there are people who don't want war, right? This is something led by the government. So a lot of people are just innocent bystanders. So if Nestle pull out, the innocent bystander will be hurt from this. And not to mention the people who work toward the Russian business efforts will probably lose their job, or there's something is going to get cut, right? But at the same time, if they don't do this, their business will also be hurt. Not to mention in the U.S., Ukraine, NATO, this whole position, Cold War mentality is shared by both sides.
Right.
So you're definitely gonna have a lot of backlash against Nestle. As someone who have been practicing boycott several times before, I will take the position to go against Nestle in this case. Even though I value the workers, I feel like if they don't pull out, they will face more backlash, likely resulting in more local people who work here losing their job or getting something cut. So that's why I feel
Right.
I will take the position, unfortunately, to boycott, Nestle.
Boycott.
Yeah.
All right. So, all right. And so we're looking at two things here. You would take this position to boycott. I really want, as you answer next, I really want you to focus on what the CEO decided to do. Should he take Kit Kat out of Russia? Big decision. Yes.
Hi, Kerry Shaw again. So what I was wondering is, what if the CEO of Nestle's communicated to the Russian authorities that whether we stay in Russia or not will depend on whether they support our move to transport baby formula and so on to needy people in the Ukraine. So we're asking, if we will produce them here in Russia, but we need free passage to Ukrainian people who are children and others in need to supply them with baby formula.
That's an interesting insight, and I think that would start like a tertiary war. Okay, we're going to take one more, not unless there's something online. Oh, we have two. Is there someone online by chance? No one's online? Okay, yes.
Hello, Ezra. I think first, especially what Alice said, like any sort of large corporation that is doing the
And Ezra, if you
Yeah.
hold the mic straight in front of you.
straight here.
Yes,
Okay, hi.
great. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, I think on kind of what Alice said, any sort of corporation that large that, first of all, feigns the theatrics of morality just kind of gets my blood boiling. But I think kind of a position I would probably take is you can take out the non-essentials. You don't need Kit Kat in Russia, but okay, maybe you keep the bottled water and the baby formula and all those sorts of things. So you're kind of, in a way, playing both sides of, okay, we own, like thousands of companies. We can keep the essentials and take out the non-essentials, and maybe everyone kind of, wins in that scenario.
Well, Ezra, you have a job with Nestle. Let me tell you what has happened here. So this is what Mr. Schneider said. He said, after extensive deliberation, I'm feeling like Mr. Schneider now. We decided on a middle ground approach. Thank you, Ezra. You're going to come in as a wonderful intern. We suspended all non-essential operations in Russia, including the sale of Kit Kat. No more Kit Kats, okay? No more Nesquik and other major consumer products. But they decided to keep the essential food products. We get to keep the water and essential baby formula and medical nutrition. At the same time, we ceased advertising in Russia and halted new investment. Despite these measures, though, we still have people around the world protesting. Some believe we should have exited entirely, while others felt we had made the right choice to maintain food security for the civilians. Ultimately, this experience reinforced the reality that ethical business decisions are rarely clear-cut, especially during times of crisis. So, everyone this morning, I want to thank you for this wonderful conversation, and I look forward to seeing you again with What Would You Do?
Thank you, Alicia. You presented two semi-historical examples, but real-life examples, two of them were in the newspapers big news this past week. What do you do at Columbia University when the government is taking away $400 million, and that means that it affects the research in the medical schools? And what do you do if you are a huge law firm that represents many people on all sides of issues when the government says, we're going to remove your ability to have security clearance, which means that you cannot do a lot of very good work for people unless you agree to some demands. When there's lots of money involved and somebody's going to withdraw it and you're doing good work and they're asking you to compromise, where do you draw the line?